Welcome to Career Spotlight presented by Educational Opportunity Centers, EOC. My name is Bill Leonard. I'm an academic specialist with EOC, and I'll be your host on this career exploration and discovery journey. The objective of Career Spotlight is to learn about careers from industry professionals in an effort to educate students and the public so they can make more informed career decisions. The career we are highlighting today is photographer. I'm excited to be joined by Michael Straub, owner of Michael Straub Photography. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, Bill. How are you? Thanks for
Good.
having me here.
I'm glad you were able to join us. Michael, why don't you please take a minute to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Sure, thanks. As you said, I'm Mike Straub. I own Michael Straub Photography. I have been doing this full-time for about 13 years, I would say. I do weddings, portraits, corporate events, headshots, all kinds of stuff. I guess what I love to say, my tagline is I love to photograph people as they participate in life.
Excellent. Well, we're so glad that you could join us. So, you own your own business, so you're an independent photographer, if you will. So tell me a little bit about, your job. What is a typical day like? What type of work do you do? I know you mentioned a little bit of what you do, but, so what is the full scope of the services that you offer?
Well, I guess a typical day is I'm able to kind of set my own schedule, which is a great advantage from the beginning in the sense of, taking care of our son and things like that. I can make sure I'm there to get him at school and pick him up and all that kind of stuff. I work a lot of evenings and weekends. Doing family portraits and weddings and all of that requires me to be at, out on the weekends. A lot of, parties and things like that happen at night. So I guess, you need to be adaptable because you don't know when the call is going to come in for that next job. And when it does, you have to, be flexible with your schedule because you're working around everybody else's celebrations or events.
So it's not a 9 to 5 type of a career. You have to be very flexible and adaptable, basically.
Exactly. And, days that I don't have a gig, a job, as they say, I would, find myself editing. And those days can be a little bit more 9 to 5, but with today's fast-paced world, you're always, answering Facebook messages or, receiving a text at 8 o'clock at night. So it's kind of, I don't want to say a 24/7 thing, but you're always busy.
Gotcha. And what was your career path to becoming a photographer? I mean, are there steps you took, or did you fall into it? What was that like?
I fell into it, quite frankly. I went to school for business and was working at Prudential Financial. I worked at a few banks, and I always had an interest in photography, but never really did anything with it. And then at the time, she's now my wife, but at the time we were just boyfriend, girlfriend. We were going to plan a trip to California. I decided that I was going to get a really good camera. And I ended up going and buying a camera and started mentoring with one of my good friends who happens to be a professional photographer. And the interest has kept growing, and it grew into a passion, actually. And then I started shooting weddings with him, and the rest is history. I just couldn't walk away from it. And I became full-time after when I was working at Prudential. They did a downsizing, quite frankly, where they asked a bunch of us to leave that day. So, I just said, well, I guess I'm a full-time photographer now. Let's see what happens.
Gotcha.
And luckily, I've been doing well.
And, for those students maybe who don't want to be an independent photographer, don't want to own their own company, they want to work for maybe a larger organization. What type of opportunities exist? And, I'm thinking, maybe working for a newspaper, a television station, a magazine. Are there others besides that? Are those the main ones? Like, what type of opportunities can they pursue?
Well, those are good opportunities, as you said. it seems that as print is becoming more and more obsolete and digital media is taking over, a lot of newspapers are still using photographers, but they're also asking them to record video as well. So news stations and that they refer to their their photojournalists as photographers, even though in that realm it's turning to mostly video.
Okay.
As far as still photography goes, there's companies such as Amazon, always looking for product photographers. Other industries could be Life Touch. They do all of the school photography. Their system is very like cookie cutter in the sense of everything is just pre-programmed and software does a lot of it for you, but you still have a career, taking portraits of kids and things like that.
Sure. And you mentioned that you started, over 10 years ago as a photographer. How has the industry changed over those 10 plus years? I assume that a lot of technology has changed. But why don't
Yeah,
you sort of tell us sort of how far it's come over those last 10 years or so?
sure. I've been doing it for probably 20 years now, full time for close to the 14. But I would say that the biggest change is what you just said, technology. We went from film to digital, and that was a huge game changer. In the past, what would happen is you would shoot a wedding, take the film, package it up, or if you had it developed locally, you would have the film developed and it went into somebody else's hands. They would take the film, develop it, and send you back 4x6 prints. You would then sleeve all of those in books and give them to your bride to look at and say, here's all your proofs. Now, all of that work falls on the photographer, because now we're shooting digital and we're sticking our memory cards into our computers and taking all those images and editing them ourselves. At a wedding, I used to bring 40 rolls of film. So 36 exposures each, you might have a 1,000 pictures, but nowadays I might shoot up to 3,000 pictures at a wedding. So then it becomes, which are the good ones? Which ones do you edit out? Which ones you turn black and white? All of that kind of stuff. And turnaround times obviously are much, much faster. There are times I'm asked by commercial clients, hey, can we get some of these pictures tonight to put on Facebook? Obviously that's all because of the digital world. So, changing from film to digital really has changed the game. Manipulation in Photoshop and all of that kind of stuff.
Sure,
You
sure.
know,
Is post-secondary education, formal education, college, is that important, to being a successful photographer?
I think so. Absolutely. You can learn the people skills, the technical skills, the business skills. There's a book called The E-Myth that I had read a long time ago,
Mhm. I've read
and
that
the
too.
author, yeah, how the author describes, you know, hey, you're not just a photographer. Now you're the marketing director, you are the PR director, you are the bookkeeper, you are the maintenance man.
Mhm.
All of those things, I think, by gaining a college education, can help you be better prepared. One example that comes real quick to mind, I'll tell a quick story. A friend of mine, his dad owns a very successful towing business, and he built it up from one tow truck to 15, 17 trucks, and they were doing well. And as we were coming out of high school, my buddy said, well, Dad, I'm ready to be in the business. He's like, no, you're going to college first. And he said, what do you mean, Dad? Everything's running smoother. I could just kind of jump in. He said, no, you're not going to make all the mistakes that I did. I want you to be a better businessman than me. So
Mm.
I want you to go to college and bring that education back, teach me, and grow this business even more.
That's a great
So,
story.
yeah,
So how about the best part of your job as a photographer?
I would say the best part is interacting with people, learning so many different things that happen here in Northeast PA. Some of the commercial shoots I've done, you don't even realize that just up the line a little bit, they are making glass that they use in the space shuttle, or, just meeting interesting people all the time, and seeing some incredible events happen that, nobody else has that personal moment to see, where a dad sees his daughter come down the steps for the first time, and, all of that. Like, one example of that, the privilege I had, his dad was a Marine, U.S. Marine, and he was a tough guy. And as he watched his daughter come down the steps in her wedding gown before we left for the church, he literally buckled at the knees and had to like grab himself on the step railing. And it was just, a beautiful moment to see this big tough guy be so emotionally intact with his daughter. It was just, so moments like that are really cool.
Sure. Now, on the other side, how about the most challenging part of being a photographer? Because it's not always fun, I assume. So, what are some of those
No.
challenges that you would like students or job seekers to know about?
I think that, again, it could be labeled people. Sometimes you're dealing with some demanding clients that have kind of out of ordinary demands. Sometimes you show up at a shoot and they say, well, you're the photographer, tell us what the best picture is. And yeah, I may know how to take the picture, but what are we taking the picture for? What is your marketing plan behind this? Are we marketing the people? Are we marketing your technology in your office, your locations? So I think another challenge would be, you need to think quick. For example, one of my clients is a health center where you might have a doctor's attention literally for 45 seconds, and you're trying to get 10 good pictures from, a very busy doctor who has nothing to do with what you're even talking about. They want to get back to their patient, and they're not being rude necessarily. They're very busy people. So you're standing there thinking, well, should I be on aperture priority? What is the lighting going to be? Can you stand over here closer to the window? And you're trying to be polite while in your head you're thinking, oh dear God, I hope I got this right.
Sure.
So you gotta be quick thinking and have good people skills.
Great. So speaking of people skills, what would you say are some of the most important people and technical skills to have as a successful photographer? I know you've mentioned, communication, adaptability, but are there some others that you think are important?
Sure. The technology of cameras is amazing nowadays, and to be able to take good photographs has gotten a lot easier. But that said, all those dials and buttons on the camera mean something, and knowing what they are and what their function is will help you produce better images. For example, do you want your background in focus or out of focus? You might be shooting a bride and she looks absolutely beautiful and you have a waterfall behind her, but if every single part of that picture is in focus, you're going to be a little distracted by the background. So maybe you want the waterfall to be out of focus and the beautiful bride in focus, so everybody goes, oh wow, look at how beautiful she looks. Other times you might be shooting products where you want every detail in focus, so you need to know what aperture to be at, that type of thing. And as far as people skills, a real quick story again. I was at the Scranton Chamber Employment Expo, and I was actually photographing it for the chamber. And a young man came up to me and he said, "Are you interested in hiring me? Here's my resume." And I said, "Well, what kind of photography do you do?" And in a very, I'll use the word confident way, as he was just graduating college, he said, "I have my degree in photography. I could photograph anything." And I said, okay, well, were you ever in a situation, and this actually happened to me, where I'm photographing a wedding. The bride was having a little problem getting her gown on. They were trying to tie up the corset in the back, and it wasn't working out too well. And she told me something very, very personal. She had mentioned that, she had just found out that she was going to be having a baby, and was right before the wedding, and now I can't fit my gown. What am I going to do? And she begins crying, and she's holding my hand real tight. And I said to this young guy, I said, well, did you ever have that happen to you? And he goes, no. I said, well, then you're not quite a wedding photographer yet. You may think in your head, what aperture you're supposed to be at, but can you handle situations that are very emotional? Can you handle business people that are going to be very demanding and unemotional? So it's a wide range.
Sure, sure. So what is the one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started, 15, 20 years ago as a photographer?
How much time you would spend working without a camera in your hand. And again, I think that goes back to the book, The E-Myth. You're the bookkeeper, you're the marketing guy. You're going to have to attend a lot of events to build up relationships. You're going to have to, keep track of all of your receipts and bill payments and taxes and all of that kind of stuff. And as much as I love to have the camera in my hand and I love to be creative and take those pictures, you're going to have to remember that camera is not going to be in your hand except for maybe 20% of the time. And the rest of the time, you're going to be editing. You're going to be handling phone calls. You're going to be, dealing with all types of different aspects that you didn't even think about.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you were speaking maybe with a high school student thinking of going to college to be a photographer, or even just a job seeker, what's maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would give that future photographer?
I would say probably the best advice I got is decide what it is you love to photograph and then market to those people. So, and I'm in no way saying that, photographers are like doctors, but you don't go to a heart surgeon if you have a problem with your brain. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So decide, if you're going to be a photographer, what is it that you love to photograph? Do you love products? A fellow photographer I know, he doesn't like to deal with people, so he only does commercial work with products and things like that. And he's very, very good at it. I love people, so I'm love to photograph people. I would say figure it out what it is that you love to photograph, weddings, landscapes, whatever it might be, and then market to that particular type of client. And don't be afraid to show your own style. There's one photographer in Colorado, all he does is photograph destination weddings on top of 3 different mountaintops in Colorado. And he's made a very successful career out of that. As he said, I when I'm in a church photographing a wedding, it doesn't motivate me. So he literally built a website and a business marketing himself to people who only want to get married outside on top of a mountaintop.
Sure.
So, find what your niche is and just go for it.
Great. Is there anything else maybe that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about as far as the photography business?
No, I think, like I said, just don't be afraid to express your style. Don't be afraid to charge a rate that you feel you deserve. I think that happens a lot with artists. We see our work and we know it means something to us and we're not sure what it means to somebody else. So we think, oh, well, give me $25. And then, at the end of the month, you start to realize, well, wait a minute, I had to drive my car to that place. I had to invest in the equipment and, don't undervalue yourself. Not saying gouge people either, but at the same time, remember everything that you're putting into it, your time, your skill, your effort, and, just have the confidence and motivation to go for it because it'll work.
Great advice, Michael. And on behalf of Educational Opportunity Centers, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and your passion for photography. I know I learned a lot today, and I'm sure our viewers did too. So again, thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thanks, Michael. We'll see you soon.
Have a great day, Bill.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.